Hello and welcome to Sunny Simple Living, where today I'm going to talk about how much it can cost to go and live off the grid to aim for a more self-sufficient life. Now, I'm saying it can cost because basically living off the grid can be anything. You can have a tiny tent somewhere, put it in the woods, really far away from civilization, next to a river, and hunt for food, forage your food. And that would be living off the grid, technically. But what I'm talking about is basically the way we are doing it. We have a normal house, we have electricity, we have running water, we have hot water, we have heating, we have everything we need, all the modern comforts, and we're still off the grid. So we are not connected to mains water, we're not connected to any electricity. We don't have, well, we have a view of electricity poles somewhere in the distance, but that's basically it. So if we haven't met yet, I'm Sandrine, and well, I live off the grid in Spain with my husband and dogs and alpacas and chickens and all that stuff. So, and I'm not saying what we are doing is the right way. I'm just trying to share what we do because I noticed we have a bed and breakfast here and we get a lot of visitors and lots of people who want to do kind of the same things as we would like. We get lots of volunteers as well. We work with Workaway and HelpX and that kind of thing to work on big projects or to harvest olives. And we often get the same questions. And one of the most important questions is, what should my budget be? How much does it actually cost to start the life you're living? And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, if you can hear me, if you can see me, yeah, I would love to know who you are. So who are you? Where are you tuning in from? I've last few times there were people from Spain, but also people from the UK and from all over. So I would love to know where you are watching from. And if you have any questions during my chats, ask them. I'm happy to answer anything I can answer. I'm really bad at numbers. That's my husband's thing, Axel, but he's not right here right now. So if you're asking me for numbers, I can come back to you about it. But now, without much further ado, let me get started on how much does it cost to live off the grid, to start a new life, to aim for self-sufficiency off the grid. Now, in order to make it a bit more graphic, Axel has designed me a roadmap. So you can see there on top that is, well, a person dreaming of an off-grid life. And we're going to talk about all the financial hurdles and everything to arrive to that situation, the actual nice house, somewhere off the grid, more self-sufficiency, etc. So first of all, the internet is full of how much does it cost to live off the grid and how much does it cost to build an off-grid system, how much does it cost to buy property, all that kind of stuff. And it's often about how to do it really cheaply, how to do it for free, like how can I make a solar system for free? And that is probably possible, but at the same time, I don't think there's such a thing as free. When you're making a solar system for free, you probably spend a lot of hours collecting all the materials to make it. You also spend a lot of hours making it. And is it as durable as something you'd buy? So all those things, we can talk about the details later, but yeah, all those things play a big role in how much it will cost you to go live off the grid. So in this chat, I'm just going to talk about all the different aspects and all the different things you will need, and then how you do it exactly. If you want to buy a high-end system, or if you want to make your own solar panels, or do you want to build a castle, or well, have a castle built for you, or if you just want that tiny tent I was just talking about, that's your choice. I'm just going to tell you about things that you will probably need on your journey to your off-grid life. So yeah, there's also such a thing as a poverty trap I would like to mention, and that is basically if you think, if your budget is tiny and you don't want to invest in things, you will probably have things that are of lesser quality and that will maybe cost you more on the long run, or maybe they'll need to be replaced sooner. So that's a really important thing to think about. For instance, you can buy things for cheaper, but they might need more maintenance on the long run, things like that. So that's an important thing to take into account. So now let's first get started with the first step is what I talked about last week, is basically looking for a property. And we talked about it quite extensively last week, like how to find your property and how to buy it and things like that. Now, one thing to know, the financial side of buying a property somewhere in the middle of nowhere, there will be extra things added to it, especially if you come to Spain. I'm giving lots of examples of living off the grid in Spain because that's where I live. But if you come to Spain, there's things like taxes, there's the note rate to be paid. Maybe you want a lawyer to go over the specifics that will cost you as well. Maybe you don't speak the language yet and you would like somebody to come with you to translate, which I would absolutely recommend because it's just not logical to sign big contracts and to buy things if you're not sure what you're signing. And maybe the real estate agent speaks English as well, but well, it's nice to have somebody who's really on your side as well. So those are things you want to think about when you're buying your property. Next step will probably be to apply for permits. Now you could maybe live off the grid without permits, but in many places it's not very accepted or it's not allowed. So I hear lots of people who say, I'm just going to buy a piece of land and put a caravan on there or put a yurt on there and just be invisible to the world. Well, first of all, you're not invisible. People will find you unless you really live in the middle of nowhere. But you'll always get, like here in Spain, they do surveys, helicopters fly over and they photograph what's there and they compare it to what was there. And if they say something new, they will investigate it. So it's... well, it's very hard to not be seen. Also, I think it's a really good thing that you need to apply for a permit because before you know it, everybody buys a tiny piece of land, puts a caravan there, and a beautiful piece of country becomes just caravans everywhere. So that's the first thing. Do apply for a permit if you're going to have a real project, if you want to really go live on a place, or even if you want it as a holiday home or something, it's good to apply for permits. Now, when you apply for permits, you might think it's really simple, but well, it's not. So you'll have probably, here in Spain especially, you have to have an architect. I hear lots of people saying, oh, I'm going to draw my house myself, I'm going to build it myself, and things like that. Well, that's very nice and well, but in order to apply for permits, your architect needs to have made a whole big project. I don't have it with me. I could post a picture later, but it's a really thick book and that will need to go to the College of Architects and be approved there and then go back to your town hall to be approved and things like that. So there's several steps in there. There's also here in this area, you also need an environmental survey done. You will also need extra licenses for water, for digging up water, for using a septic tank, for all those things. And every little permit, every little step, every engineer or architect or maybe the surveyor of everyone you need will cost money as well. Now, how much money? That really depends on how much your project, how big your project is, but every little step will cost you money as well. Probably a percentage of the total. So the bigger the house you're going to build, the more your architect is going to cost, the more your license is going to cost with town hall, the more the College of Architects will ask for that, things like that. So there's a lot of factors in there, but it's something to not be forgotten. Now, next, while you're on your way to getting the permits, you maybe want to do some infrastructure works. For instance, is your the place you want to build your house in, is that easily accessible? Or will you need to maybe put a road in or maybe make the road a bit better so big trucks and lorries can get up that road or down that road if you're living somewhere down a mountain? So that kind of thing. Also, simple things like if you have terraces, like we have a lot of terraces and we have needed quite a lot of repairs to terrace walls and also like stairs between terraces, because when you're building, it's just not convenient to have to go all the way around or to find a way. And it's good if you don't have your permits yet, you're waiting. You can do little things like that, repair a terrace here and make the road better and things like that. Now, one day, we'll go back to our thing here, but one day you'll get your permits. And that's when it really starts, right? That's when you really can get to work. And work can be anything. So you might have decided to do everything yourself. You might have decided to go with a complete external team. Most people I know who want to live off the grid want to do at least part of it themselves, even if it's just a finishing, or they maybe want to just be there. And that's a really good thing, especially if you're building your own house and you probably have some ideas about how your house needs to be. If you're having somebody else building it for you, you'll probably want to be there as much as possible so you can make sure everything goes well. So while you're doing all that, in the whole process, you'll have several costs like, if you still live abroad or if you live far away from the building site, you'll need to travel. And how much do you need to travel and how cheap do you want to travel? That's your thing. There will also be housing costs when you stay here. You will maybe want to stay somewhere. Maybe you just bought a caravan to put next to your building site, which is probably the cheapest way to go, especially as well, things don't always go as quick as you might like. So we just talked about those permits. They can take just a few months, but my experience is they take a lot longer than that. And if you have decided to stay a lot on site while you're waiting for permits, you will need to find housing. And you can rent a house in a nearby village or town, or you can build something small that nobody will notice that that's already a part of your bigger project, things like that. You can put on a caravan, but all of those are costs you will need to take into account, of course. We just had the permits here. So once you have the permits, it's time to get to work. And getting to work, especially if you have two places still, if you haven't completely moved, you'll want your tools and your materials. So are you going to buy new tools and machinery? What tools will you need? Also, if somebody else is building your house, you will still want some tools of your own. You will want some, if you have trees in your land, you will need tools to take care of those trees. If you have, things like repairing the terrace walls, what I was just talking about, you will need a shovel and a wheelbarrow to take care of that at least. And maybe you'll need to build something here and there, like maybe a small things for wood or something. So all of those, you will need materials for those. You will need tools for those and machinery sometimes. Like, how are you going to have electricity? If you need electricity to work with, how are you going to do that? Do you want to install your systems, or do you just want a small generator just for building? Now, that leads us to the next thing, and that is I forgot the thing for infrastructure works, of course, and that is basically, that's here. So that's building the road and repairing terrace walls. But next there is, maybe you'll want to think of putting in your systems already, maybe applying for a license to do a borehole. You need a license to do a borehole. You can just come there and do a borehole. The company you'll want to work with will want to know you have a license for it. And that borehole can be anything, but most people I talk to, like around here and a bit further up, some have a borehole that's only 60 to 80 meters deep. I have one, we have one that's 140 meters deep. I talked to somebody this morning who had one that was 200 meters deep. And the average cost that I've heard about around here for that is 66 euros a meter. So that's a really big thing to take into account. You might think, oh, it's just boring a hole, but no, it's a really big thing to take into account, those 66 euros a meter, especially also since the deeper your borehole goes, the more it will cost you, not only to make it, but also the bigger the pump you will need. Maybe the more electricity you'll need to to get all that water up. So we do have a borehole, but I think if we would do it again, we might not get one, and we might invest in more rainwater collection, because around here there's more than enough rainwater. You know, it only falls like twice a year, so you need a really big tank to catch it all. If you have a smaller tank, it will just overflow and you'll be without water in the middle of the summer, or sometimes in the middle of the winter, because it doesn't rain much in winter either, usually, often. But yeah, those are all things you need to take into account. Also, you want your solar system to be up and running before you start building the house. So you want to build part of your house on solar, or are you just going with a generator for now? And are you going to buy a solar system later? With solar systems, of course, the longer you wait, the cheaper they become and the more sophisticated they become as well. So waiting a bit with a solar system is probably a good idea. But if you need electricity, it's no use using a generator for months or years if you're just using electricity every day, because the diesel or the gas that goes into that generator will cost you money as well. And like every time you drive to the gas station to get more gas for that generator, that costs money as well. So that's one of the tiny things that get forgotten. Every time you go to the shop to get tools or to get materials, every time you you fill up your generator, that will cost you money, and that all adds up, especially if you live off the grid. You are maybe far away from other things, so don't forget to count transport costs. Also, if you need to have things delivered to your place, it might cost more because you're further away, things like that. Or they might not bring it to your place. They might live in a village where you have to go and get it, things like that. One thing, I seem to be forgetting one thing, but I'm not sure what that is. Transport, people to pay licenses, all that. So we talked a tiny bit about systems. We're going to talk a lot more about that in the next few weeks. Don't worry about it. So next, you'll be building your house if all goes well. And building your house, I already said, you can do part of it yourself, but you will need some people to come in and do some things for you, especially, I'm talking from our Spanish point of view. Well, I'm not Spanish, we just live in Spain, but here you need an architect to sign for things. You need an electrician to sign for your electrical system. So you need people to sign off on things, and they're usually not happy to sign on things they haven't done themselves. So if you're thinking of installing your own electricity, don't just expect any electrician to then sign that it's perfectly done. So you might as well want to work with an electrician or work with somebody who does it the official way and who's able to sign off on all things. So one day at the end of all this, your house will be built and you think that's the end of it. Well, you probably, hopefully don't think that, because it's not the end of it. That's where it all begins, of course. So first of all, that house itself, once it's there, it's not quite finished, as in, you'll want to register it as well. If you're building something off the grid, people really wanted to register it, especially here in Spain, but I've heard that's the case in many other countries. You just need to register your house with whatever authority that goes over it. Even if it's just to, for instance, if there's a forest fire or something, they want to know where everybody is. They want to be able to rescue you if you're enclosed by fire. And if you are building something tiny and trying to hide it, it's possible. But if something happens, well, you're not going to get a lot of help if all goes really bad. Also, so I'm saying it's not all finished because you have a house, but maybe you thought of this before. You have your systems as well. You probably want to connect all of those things. You might need extra pumps. We had a lot of little things like that, like we had made calculations and then turned out, oh, that pump needed to be just a bit more, and we need just a tiny bit more filters. We need more this, we need more that. So it becomes a lot more than what you actually think it's going to be, and that's something to take into account, right? Also, if you want to live a more self-sufficient life, you'll probably want a garden, or you want trees, or you want that kind of things. You want to take care of your property. You want to design things. You want And that's, yeah, you can go quite cheap, but you can also go really expensive if you want it all done in no time. If you want to do it cheaply, it will cost you more time until you're really up and running. But starting a garden is not only a lot of work, but it costs money as well in different ways. For instance, you'll want good soil, for instance. So you maybe want to go and get manure somewhere, or you maybe want to get soil even from somewhere else. And all of that, maybe you can get manure for free, but it will still cost you, like transportation costs. Maybe you'll want to buy a trailer to put that manure on, or maybe you'll want to rent a trailer, things like that. A trailer is a really good thing to have, though. If you live off the grid, you can transport anything with it, from manure to animals to just going to IKEA and buying the furniture, right? So starting a garden, you'll maybe want raised beds, and those can be done for free. You can build little walls and everything, but that costs a lot of money. So I'm actually going to draw you something, and that is the triangle of quality. There's quality, there's time, and there's money. And it's always a big struggle to get, a good proportion of each, because when you want things to be done well, and you want them to be done cheaply, it will cost you a lot of time. If you want them to be done quickly and be done cheaply, then we probably won't be done very well. And if you want it to be really quickly and done well, then it's probably going to cost money. So the art is to be somewhere in the middle, probably, but that's something I strongly believe in. Like, everything you need, everything you build is going to cost you something. If it can be money, it can be time, or it can be just quality or comfort even. Like, we could live in a tiny tent and that's not going to cost us anything. That's going to be really quick, but the comfort is not the same as having a real house with a real bed, etc. So I'm just going to check if I'm forgetting things. Oh yeah, so we were at the garden, and yeah, I was talking about building raised beds, adding soil. You might want to buy seeds. Maybe you'll just be able to find seeds here and there. Maybe you just want to forage for the time being. Maybe you can exchange seeds. Maybe you have already been collecting seeds for a longer time, and I think that's a really good idea, to collect seeds even before you begin, because the best seeds are the ones you collect from really reputable sources. And things like, you can buy seeds at the local jardineria, at the local garden center, but you can just as well buy seeds that are organic, or exchange seeds, and that's going to cost you maybe a bit more money, maybe a bit more time to find out where they are and how you can find them, things like that. You might also want to buy trees, to have fruit trees, to have olive trees, almond trees, whatever trees you would like, decorative trees. Those cost money as well. They don't need to cost much money. Like, our trees, most of them cost between 5 and 10 euros a piece, but it's not one tree I'm buying, it's not 5 trees I'm buying, it's a lot of trees I want to buy. So take all these into account: seeds, trees, maybe extra pots you need, maybe also the tools you will need to plant trees, to work in your garden. If you have a really big piece of land, you might even want maybe a tractor to work on it, especially if you have if you have a lot of trees, like if you have hundreds of trees and you need to harvest them all at the same time, either you'll have to employ a lot of people to do it, or you'll need machines to do it. So all of those, take them all into account when you when you plan your off-grid life, right? Or your self-sufficient life. I'm not saying you need to go off the grid now, but if you just want to live more self-sufficiently, this can be a really good thing to think about. Sorry. Now, one last thing I need to talk about, because lots of people have that really idyllic ideas of, we're going to keep animals, keep chickens for eggs, maybe keep pigs even, or goats, and have goat's milk every day, things like that. Now, animals cost a lot of money. they might be really, yeah, they might be free when you just acquire them. So you might meet somebody in the village who says, I have a few goats, you can have them. They're not doing anything in my house, and you'll come home with goats. But then what to do? You'll need fences, you'll need stables, and goats especially, they need really good fences. But even with chickens, you can have free-range chickens, but you will still need a really good chicken coop or another system to keep predators away. So animals do cost money. They also cost money in maintenance, so you will feed them, and for bigger animals especially, you might need vets to come in, or maybe vaccinations or deworming, things like that. We have alpacas in this. Yeah, there's vets, there's shearing, for instance. Once a year they need to be sheared, and we need, well, to clip their nails really, really soon. We're going to do that next week. So all of those things, they often, you need tools for that. And that's, well, little things to take into account, but many little things will add up. And one last thing with animals is the fencing. Everybody who does it says, wow, that's expensive. Everybody who hasn't done it says, oh, it's only that much a meter, but fencing is expensive. Even if you just want really simple fencing, it just costs money. So if you want animals, think about where you're going to put the fences, how many fences you'll need. You probably, you might need more than one pasture if you don't want that pasture to become desert in no time. So animals cost money as well. In the long run, of course, they may make you some money as well. Like if you have chickens, you can get some money by selling the eggs or by selling the extra roosters for meat. Or you may, if you have goats, you could sell the milk, things like that. But, well, the acquisition and getting started with animals especially costs a lot of money. Now, let's see, what else am I forgetting? Yeah, in the meantime, while you're in this whole process, I know I mentioned it in the beginning, but there is, it costs a lot of money to travel back and forth. It costs money. I'm not saying a lot, but it does cost money. Housing costs money. Like if you're renting a house in the village, it might not be much as far as rent goes, but you'll need to pay electricity and gas and maybe some extra things as well. So that costs extra money, and that's one thing we did not take into account enough, because mainly we thought we were promised our house would be up in no time, and we would be able to go live in that house within, well, not much time. And in the end, it turned out to be several years before it was done, which was actually fine and quite normal. We probably shouldn't have believed that it would have been done that quickly, but yeah, sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in a dream, right? Another thing that, and what we ended up doing as well was just renovating a small stable that was on the property already. So we lived in there until the big house was ready. And also we spent the winter house sitting for friends and things like that. So there's always those possibilities. But I'm just saying it's a really important thing to take into account. And one last thing that we are also seeing now, we've been living in this house for about 1.5 years now, and there is a lot of maintenance to be done, and everything costs money. Like it's not only cleaning your solar panels, it's also like this week we had to top up the batteries. We had to go and get distilled water and top up the batteries. And there's small things like repairing things that are already, like our terrace walls will sometimes crumble when it rains a lot, things like that. All of those cost just a tiny bit of money, but they all contribute towards the big thing. And that's what I'm going to talk about next week as well, is how much it actually costs when you're living off the grid. How much do you actually spend? Like, what do we spend our money on every day, every week, every month, and every year? Yeah, when it comes to that, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is if you start a company. So some people will want to do something business-ish when they go for their self-sufficient life. So you may want to start, like we did, a bed and breakfast, or maybe a restaurant, or maybe you just want to, have a real farm. whatever you want to do when you live off the grid, if you have a business, that may cost you money as well, especially here in Spain. Spain, for instance, being self-employed means paying monthly autonomo, and that covers also as well pension and social security, but still it can be quite a lot of money. You could come in at lower cost, but by the end it will cost you easily 300 euros a person a month, and that's something to take into account, especially since many of us want to go live off the grid with the idea of spending less money, of being more self-sufficient, of not having to pay these monthly bills. So that monthly autonomo bill is, well, not fun, but yeah, that's the way it is because we have our own business here. So are there any questions about any of the things I mentioned? Maybe things I didn't mention. If you do live off the grid and you're thinking of anything, oh, I wish I had thought of that when I was putting my budget together, by all means mention it here in the chat, and I will come in and answer any questions, because I know it's in the middle of the day. Many people are working right now, so there's not many people. I'm really happy with the people who are watching live. Hi, but there's not many people watching live. So if you come in and watch this later, if you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer them as well. Like I said, next week, Friday, I'm going to talk about what it actually costs us to live off the grid. And then I might as well answer any questions you could have today. So if you have questions, ask them. If you have any remarks, anything you think that is not quite my experience, by all means post it in the comments and I'll be happy to come back to it later. Now, that's it for now. If you want to get notified every time I go live like this, subscribe to the newsletter. I'll post a link there in a minute, or just follow the page Sunny Simple Living. There's also, if you're really interested in living off the grid, especially living off the grid in Spain, there is a group just for that, so do check out the group. It's called Living off the Grid in Spain, very original. Now that's it for now. I hope you learned something today, you heard what you wanted to hear. If there's anything that I didn't think of that you would like to know something about when it comes to the financial side of starting your off-grid life, I'm happy to give any. Well, I could give you the prices we spend on things, like the money we spend on things, but I don't think that's much use because it will be different for different regions. Like, for instance, the solar system we got 2 years ago is already worth a lot less now, as in the same system costs a lot less now, and maybe there's more evolved systems as well. So that's a bit tricky, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have for me. So for now, I'll leave you. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you next week, or in the meantime, somewhere else, maybe on the Facebook page or in the Facebook group. So see you. Bye-bye.